With the average price of a new vehicle at a staggering $45,000, car owners can no longer afford to be careless with maintenance. In this video, I'll be sharing 17 maintenance habits that will make your engine last over 900,000 miles without major repairs. I'm revealing secrets your mechanic and the manufacturer have been hiding from you. At the end of the video, I'll reveal one bonus habit that could actually put money back in your pocket. Number 17, never rev a cold engine. More than 90% of all turbocharger failures are due to oil-related problems. This could either be oil contamination or oil starvation, and nothing starves a turbo like a cold rev. A cold start is bad enough, but a cold rev is significantly worse. Cold oil is thick and moves like molasses. When you rev an engine before the oil has circulated, you're creating metal-to-metal contact. For turbochargers, this is near instant death, but it's just as bad in non-turbos. Revving a cold engine can cause spun bearings. That's a major repair. The worst quote I've seen on a repair for spun bearings topped $11,000 for a BMW 3 Series. Cold revs can also cause stretched connecting rods. That's an extra $1,500 to $4,000 repair. So, the next time someone tells you to rev a cold engine to warm it up quicker, ask for their credit card. The other extreme method of warming up cars is a long idle. This method prevents the engine from reaching its optimal temperature quickly. On top of that, it causes incomplete combustion, which damages cylinder walls. Fuel dilution and contaminated transmission fluid are other risks. The correct way to warm up your engine is to switch it on and start driving gently after about 30 seconds. If it's really cold, you can idle for 60 seconds before driving. Keep the car below 2,500 RPM for the first 5 minutes. This will save your fuel, your engine, and your wallet. Remember that starting an engine during winter is harder than usual anyway, but the next habit makes it easier. Number 16, replace the timing and serpentine belts at 60,000 miles, or 5 years. One of the quickest ways to destroy an engine is with a timing belt failure. The timing belt's job is to perfectly synchronize the movement of the crankshaft and the camshaft. When the belt snaps, pistons and valves collide with each other. This can also crack the cylinder heads and the engine block. You're looking at a brand new engine that can top $8,000 in luxury cars. But that's not the only danger. When the timing belt fails, the engine stalls. Imagine if this happens on the highway. Forget a new engine, you might need a new casket. That is why you have to replace the timing belt at 60,000 miles or every 5 years. The rubber degrades over time, so even if you haven't hit the miles yet, it could still wear out. Don't wait for the check engine light. Don't wait until it breaks. The same goes for the serpentine belt. The car will run for a bit longer, but you'll eventually lose power. Also, make sure to change the tensioners, pulleys, and the water pump. This entire repair might cost about $1,500 to $2,000, including labor. However, it will save your engine, and it can save your life. At the end of this video, I'll share a tip that will make all of your diligence worth it. Number 15, change your brake fluid every 3 to 5 years. Did you know that brake fluid is hygroscopic? What that means is that it absorbs moisture from the air. That kicks off a chain reaction that could bring your car to a grinding halt and not on your terms. Water reduces the boiling point of brake fluid, which becomes a problem under heavy braking. When you're doing downhill too quickly, for example, the water in the fluid will evaporate, causing vapor pockets. This is what makes brake pedals feel spongy. In fact, several studies recommend you change DOT brake fluid every 12 to 24 months. That's because DOT3 and DOT4 absorb moisture at a rate of 2 to 3% per year. At 3%, The boiling point of DOT3 brake fluid can drop by as much as 25%. That will drastically increase your braking distance, which is particularly dangerous for pedestrians. Besides accident risks, the extra moisture can also corrode the internal components of your ABS module. This is a repair that will cost you over $1,300. So, is the $200 brake fluid replacement worth it? Absolutely. A common theme in this video is that small investments prevent large expenses. The next tip proves this point perfectly. Number 14, change your oil by usage, not mileage. You've heard it all before. Change your oil every 3,000 miles. Change it every 5,000 miles or every 6 months. Use a full mobile synthetic that can last 15,000 miles. What if I told you they were all wrong? The secret to oil changes is not by the number of miles, but by how you drive. Most car manuals recommend 10,000 to 15,000 mile oil changes. However, that is the regular service schedule, which most people don't qualify for. Instead, you need to look at the severe service schedule, which is half of that. If you drive within the city, tow, live in a dusty place, use a start-stop system, or make frequent short trips, you are a severe car user. However, if you drive a lot on highways with a lot of dust or pollutants, you are somewhere in between. If you must follow a rule, stick with an oil change every 5,000 miles or 6 months with full synthetic. Changing the oil too soon only costs a few dollars, but changing it too late can cost you an engine. After all, 43% of engine failures are due to lubrication problems. But in some studies, this number was as high as 80%. If you make a lot of short trips, fuel gets into the oil and doesn't get burned off. This drastically reduces the lifespan of the oil. Here's a bonus tip for people who love their cars. Once a year, send your oil to a lab for an analysis. This will let you know what's breaking down in your engine and how often you should be changing oil. These tests cost $100, but they help to prevent engine failure that will cost between $4,000 and $8,000. That's money well spent, if you ask me. Next is another tip that can cost you $5,000 if you ignore it. Number 13, change transmission fluid every 60,000 miles. There was a time when everybody changed their transmission fluid every 50,000 to 100,000 miles. Then we started hearing about lifetime transmission fluids, which turned out to be a marketing gimmick, and a very costly one at that. Unlike oil, you can't top off transmission fluid, and unfortunately, it always looks good. But over time, transmission fluid loses additives, experiences oxidation, and gets contaminated by clutch debris. As the fluid degrades, you'll begin to experience rough shifting, clutch slipping, or even overheating. When the damage is severe, you'll need to replace the entire transmission. That is why you should perform a drain and fill every 60,000 miles, or every 6 years. For hybrids, you need to do this every 60,000 to 90,000 miles, or 6 to 9 years. However, never replace the transmission fluid for a high-mileage car if it's the first time. The irony about trans fluids is that the clutch debris inside also helps to season clutches. So if you drain or flush that out, your transmission will start slipping. Only use OEM transmission fluids. If you have a CVT, only use CVT transmission fluid. Using the wrong fluid on a CVT will damage the engine immediately. Always use the recommended fluids, especially for the next thing. Number 12, change coolant every 50,000 miles or 5 years. Did you know that 53% of premature engine failure is caused by improper care of the cooling system? Some studies estimate that as many as 60% of cars on the road are low or dangerously low on coolant. That is why you need to check coolant levels at least once a month. But beyond that, You also need a coolant flush every 50,000 miles. Besides preventing your engine from overheating, coolant also contains corrosion inhibitors. When these inhibitors get used up, the coolant becomes acidic. It will then attack seals, hoses, and metals in the radiator and water pump. Modern coolant would typically last at least 5 years or 50,000 miles before it turns acidic. OEM coolants can also last up to 150,000 miles. However, that's not a risk worth taking. Once corrosion gets into your engine, it's toast. We've got some more coolant tips in this video. Doing this will make your car's cooling system last forever. But open it in a new tab because we've got another important maintenance tip up next. Number 11, regular differential and transfer case service every 30,000 to 50,000 miles. This is one of those things many drivers hear a mechanic speak about, and they think it's a scam. After all, regular drivers never think to check the differential and transfer case fluids. Well, most people don't even know what they are to begin with. The differential allows wheels on an axle to rotate at different speeds. A transfer case is found on four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive vehicles, and is responsible for splitting engine power between the front and rear axles. Differential fluid is gear oil that contains extreme pressure additives, while the transfer case uses gear oil, or ATF. Both fluids need to be checked regularly and changed every 30,000 to 50,000 miles. If the additives degrade or there are too many contaminants, it can cause severe damage to the gears and bearings. Getting a new gearbox can cost as much as $5,000, plus $1,400 to replace all four wheel bearings. If you're learning a lot from this video, hit like and the subscribe button for more great content. Number 10, replace spark plugs 60,000 to 120,000 miles. Here is something most people don't know or have never experienced. Good spark plugs are meant to last at least 10 years or 120,000 miles. Unfortunately, most spark plugs barely survive half as long. Overheating, oil contamination, and carbon fouling are the main killers of spark plugs. However, it all begins with choosing the right plugs. Spark plugs are responsible for clean burns and help fuel efficiency. Using $2 plugs will cost you more at the tank. Even worse, your car might misfire under load, resulting in P0301 and P0302 codes. While good quality copper plugs are fine, it's better to get platinum or iridium-coated plugs. Platinum plugs can last 100,000 miles, while iridium can last twice as long. That said, there isn't much of a difference in performance among all three. The main advantage is longevity and consistency over time. If you're using iridium plugs, you should still take them out every 10 years and put them back in. This will prevent the plugs from seizing up. Number 9, check and clean mass airflow sensor. If you're experiencing a rough idle, poor fuel economy, or engine misfires, one of the first things you should inspect is the mass airflow sensor. The MAF measures the flow of air into the engine. It sends this information to the ECU, which will then determine how much fuel should go into the combustion chamber. However, the MAF is a very vulnerable tool. Once a bit of dirt or oil gets in it from aftermarket air filters, it gives incorrect readings. This can cause either a rich or lean condition. Eventually, this will damage the catalytic converter, which costs over $2,000 to replace on average. Inspect the MAF every 6 months or whenever you change the air filter. If it's dirty, you can clean it with a CRC MAF sensor cleaner or 99% isopropyl alcohol. If it's damaged, replace it immediately. That small part can cause almost as much catastrophic damage as the next one. Number 8, replace the PCV valve immediately. If you drive a lot of short trips, chances are you're wearing out one of the most underrated heroes of your engine. The positive crankcase ventilation valve prevents pressure buildup in the crankcase. It redirects blow-by gases, which contain harmful contaminants, back into the intake system to be reburned. This action also prevents the release of unburned fuel and contaminants into the environment. PCV valve gets back. That pressure buildup damages gaskets and seals, leading to oil leaks. You will also experience rough idling, poor engine performance, and misfires. We cover this topic in detail in 13 Signs and Symptoms of a Bad PCV Valve. While there is no specific time to replace the PCV valve, 30,000 miles is a safe bet. Even if it's working fine, it's a $15 part that can cause $1,000 problems. Swap it out and rest easy. If most of your trips are under 15 minutes, you can replace the PCV valve as early as 20,000 miles. At the end of the video, I'll show you a habit that can help you recoup some of these costs. Up next is another secret shady mechanics don't want you to know. Number 7. Use top-tier fuel. Many people believe that fuel additives are snake oil. However, nothing could be further from the truth. There is one source of fuel additives that is recommended by every major manufacturer. Those fuel additives are found in top-tier gas and diesel, and they're a menace to carbon buildup and mechanics. Top-tier fuel was created because car makers were unhappy with the minimum additive standards set by the Environmental Protection Agency. After all, the EPA doesn't know what's best for cars. Top tier contains polyethyramine, which is the critical ingredient in fuel additives like T-cron concentrate, ATS chemical 505, and gumout. A study by AAA found that, on average, top-tier gasoline resulted in 19 times fewer intake valve deposits than non-top-tier fuel. This is particularly helpful for GDI engines. When you use top-tier fuel, it dissolves carbon buildup in the fuel system and reduces unburnt fuel. This is good for the environment, your fuel economy, and your catalytic converter. While many people complain about the price, it only costs 3 cents per gallon more than non-top tier fuel. However, if you don't want to use this fuel, then you must use fuel additives, especially on older engines. Number 6. Check tire pressure monthly. According to the NHTSA, tire problems account for 35% of all car crashes where the vehicle was at fault. The majority of these crashes were due to tire blowouts or worn-out tires. Why is that? Most people don't check their car tire pressure monthly, but even when they do, they don't know the right PSI. This number is printed clearly on the driver's side door jamb and not on the tire wall. The number on the tire is the maximum PSI. The number on the door is for your specific car. On average, tires lose 1 PSI every month, which is why you need to check them often. Don't wait for the tire pressure light to show up on your dashboard. This only comes on when the pressure is 25% lower than the manufacturer's recommendation. However, losing as little as 2 PSI will already impact fuel economy, handling, braking, and the tire's lifespan. Speaking of which, aim to replace your tires 6 years after the manufacturing date on the wall. Older tires are more likely to blow out. Nothing shortens engine lifespan like a terrible crash. That is why you also need to be precise with the next point. Number 5, wheel alignment and suspension checks. Ignore your alignment, and you're not just chewing through tires. You're killing your car piece by piece. When the wheels fight each other, your engine, transmission, and differentials all work harder. That strain grinds down parts most people can't afford to replace. Bad alignment is also a warning sign. It usually means your suspension is already failing. Ball joints, bushings, shocks. And when those give out at highway speed, you don't get a warning light. You just lose control. The fix is cheap compared to the risk. Get your alignment checked once a year or anytime you add new tires or hit a pothole. A $100 alignment today can stop you from facing a blown drivetrain or a totaled car tomorrow. Number 4, replace brake pads immediately. According to the NHTSA, 22% of car crashes are brake-related. This relates to accidents due to a fault with the vehicle, not the driver. Although technically, Not replacing your brake pads on time is the driver's poor decision. Driving with bad pads will also damage your rotors, which is an expensive repair. You could end up paying up to $600 per axle for new rotors and pads, instead of $400 for all pads. Brake pads can last 30,000 to 70,000 miles. However, once you hear squealing or the friction materials go below 1/8 inch, it's time for new ones. Remember that how you drive is the greatest factor that determines the lifespan of your pads. Make sure to inspect the pads every 10,000 miles. Next up is another fluid you need to inspect often before it causes irreparable damage. Number 3, change power steering fluid every 50 to 70,000 miles. Here is another thing that many car manuals get wrong. No, not with the frequency of changes. Most car makers and experts agree that 50,000 to 70,000 miles is the sweet spot. This is when the fluid starts getting dark. Another clear sign is that steering becomes difficult. Easy steering isn't just for convenience, but also for safety. If you can't maneuver the steering easily, it's a lot harder to escape obstacles, especially during winter. Fluid leaks and unusual noises are signs that you need to replace it. Now, when you do change the power steering fluid, don't use automatic transmission fluid. I know your manual says so, but ignore it. ATF does not have the same additives as power steering fluid. That is why your manual might also recommend changing it every 30,000 miles. That's because the ATF won't do as good a job. You don't have to use the manufacturer's power steering fluid either. Use a compatible power steering fluid and you'll be fine. These costs add up, but don't be cheap, especially not with the next thing. Number 2, replace the fuel filter at OEM interval. Back in the day, you could quickly tell if you had a clogged fuel filter. Hard starting, poor acceleration, engine misfires, and other symptoms would spring up immediately. But modern cars are in a sense too clever. When the fuel filter begins to clog, the fuel pump works harder to ensure the right amount of fuel gets to your engine. This is a good thing because it prevents lean conditions, which can be catastrophic to engines. However, it also means that you might not notice the problem until the fuel pump wears out. This can cost over $1,000 to repair. That is why you must replace the fuel filter at the OEM recommended interval, even if your car feels fine. Unlike other routine maintenance habits, there is no fixed time for fuel filter replacements. Some cars suggest as often as 30,000 miles, while others are lifetime filters or 100,000 miles. Number 1, clean battery terminals twice a year. 18% of car breakdowns are due to flat or failing batteries. While there are many things that can drain your battery, the leading cause is corrosion. That white, blue, or green powder on your battery terminal doesn't belong there. That's what happens when sulfuric acid from the battery interacts with the metal of the terminals. This corrosion affects the electrical current, which prevents your battery from charging and discharging properly. Eventually, this will leave you stranded, but before then, it would ruin vehicle performance and possibly damage the alternator and a few electrical components. Luckily, this has a quick and easy fix. Mix baking soda with warm water to make a paste, then scrub it off with a toothbrush. Dry the terminals, then apply an anti-corrosive gel or petroleum jelly. Do this twice a year or as often as you see corrosion. This is the second cheapest trick on this list, but it doesn't compare the bonus. Bonus, keep a logbook. If you plan on selling your car or getting an upgrade after it hits 900,000 miles, this little trick will help. Keeping comprehensive maintenance records can boost the resale value of your car by 20%. You should also keep all of your maintenance receipts. This way, you can recover some of the money from your diligent care. Besides that, keeping a logbook will also ensure you stay on top of all of these repairs. After all, this is a pretty comprehensive list. If you follow this advice, you could potentially get your car even past 500,000 miles. However, good maintenance isn't enough. You also need to avoid these 19 stupid oil change mistakes that destroy your engine.